have a theory.
Okay.
And I thought we could discuss this theory that I've been working on for the last 2 weeks.
And you put me on the spot, but okay.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Of course. You're used to it. You're a pastor.
Okay.
You can
Yeah,
answer
that's true.
questions on the spot, no problem.
I don't know about no problem, but we'll go for it.
That's okay. Yeah. We're here to explore.
Yeah.
We're here to, wrestle with some stuff, not just to give nice, clean answers.
Well, that's true, because a lot of people think that just because we talk about this, that's what we actually believe at times.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
as opposed to what we're exploring.
As opposed to what we're exploring.
Yeah, and figuring out a pathway forward. And
so people got to chill with that a little bit. You know what I mean?
Chill out.
Just, it's okay. Let's have discussions. This is good.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, my theory is this. I've been thinking about discipleship and how there are these stages to discipleship. And I was trying to quantify or to name some of these stages. Now, obviously it's impossible to do. Everybody's so different and it's complex and nuanced and all of that. But at the same time, there are just certain people that you interact with and I interact with, and then there are certain patterns to those interactions that come up again and again. And so I wanted to put names to some of these patterns and then ask you a few questions. So I've titled this The 4 Stages of Discipleship.
Ooh, okay.
And I want to talk about each 4 stages and then ask you a few questions. And so I'm going to define what I call the first stage of discipleship. Is the person who comes into church, and I want to call these people the skeptic. It's the people who they're cautious, they're maybe a bit more suspicious, their walls are up, probably a little bit higher, they're more guarded. Okay. And maybe that's for a whole number of reasons. Maybe they're worried about getting sucked into, is this a cult or what is this? Am I gonna, do they just want my money?
Yeah. Are they going to make me do something that I don't want to do?
You know already who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
There are the people that come into the church building and they're sitting there and their frame of reference is convince me.
Sure.
And they're doubters by nature. It's kind of the doubting Thomas syndrome. And they're sort of peeking through the window, but they're also afraid to fully engage and to fully step in. And I think I would guess that 10 to 20% of most churches are filled with skeptics. The first time visitor who friend has dragged them along, and they're trying to they're kind of inquisitive, but at the same time, it's much more guarded.
Yeah.
And so I have a couple of questions about that, about how do we deal with skeptics? And my first question to you as a pastor and as you help people navigate and grow in discipleship, how does the church create safe space for skeptics to come and to feel like they have a place and you're allowed to be skeptical? Yeah. And so how do we as a church, how have you navigated that with people by creating safe spaces for them?
Well, I think it's trying to create conversation around it, right? Like safe conversations that they can ask any questions or come to us and ask anything that would maybe confronting even to the church, but not being offended by it and not having a static answer to go back at them with something, right? Even though you may think or know that it's true and right. But it's just allowing them to, and what we call around here, to journey a little bit, right? Let them journey with it. Let them wrestle with that a little bit and be skeptical. It's okay. I'm skeptical, when you walk into something and it's new, it's a nuance, it's new. You're kind of skeptical of it, you're not sure about it. But I think as someone would maybe come to our church, I can't speak for every church, but as they would come to our church in that space, to let them have that journey with the Lord. I've always said it like this: we don't try to get people. If 0 is where we want them to meet Christ, that's where we want them, right? We want them to meet Christ there. But if they're a -10 walking in and they leave the building and they're a -8, well, that's a few steps closer. And I think that for me is a win that day for them. And so I just, John, what we try to do around here. We just try to love people as they come through the door, right where they are, skeptical, not skeptical, whatever different theologies they have or theological thoughts that they have, that's irrelevant at the point. Like, we're just loving people as they walk through the door. And I think that alone, our family environment feels like, okay, this is a place I can belong to. This is a place that's safe for me, even though I'm skeptical. So I think there's a couple of different things, but I don't know if that answers it. But I just feel like that's the environment we have. Yeah.
Have you kind of touched on this, but have you ever been skeptical in your faith?
Yeah. I think a lot of it had to do with, well, I'll tell you what, I was challenged back in the early 2000s and maybe skeptical from a standpoint of, maybe philosophy of ministry, skeptical of that, how we were doing church,
okay,
Yeah. And so at that point in my life, I was really stuck, and I just, there was something that was just amiss in my heart, in my soul, about how we were doing church in the early stages of the 2000s. And it wasn't that we were doing it, what I would consider someone doing it wrong. It just was, there was things that were shifting, I felt like, in the church world, but also just in my spirit, and how to view people, how to see people differently, all of those things, and exploring Scripture, not just from a deeper level, but just from a level of perspectives of from a Hebraic perspective, different things like that. And I think that was really some of the most challenging moments of my life, when it came to just philosophy of ministry and how we were doing church. And I think that shifted a little bit, being skeptical, again, not of that we were leading people down this terrible path, wrong, in a wrong way. It's just because every church has its own philosophy of ministry and how they do it. But for us, I felt like there was just things that were shifting, and so I was just being skeptical in that moment about how we were doing things. Led me in a different journey, a different path, from a philosophy of ministry standpoint. And so yeah, I think over the years, I think that was one of the really key areas that just really stands out with that.
I'm always really jealous of people that just live with no skepticism ever.
Yeah.
They just sort of seem to have this abiding faith in everything.
Yeah.
That'll all pan out. And it's not because I'm skeptical by nature, or maybe I am. I don't tend to think of myself that way. But there are certainly times in my own walk where I've had questions, around healing, for example.
Oh, okay.
Like,
yeah.
God, does this really work? Do you really heal? And there are times where we pray and believe, and it just seems like there's faith in the room, and it doesn't work out, maybe in the way that we expect.
Sure.
Yeah. But coming back to that place of trust, and that there are things that we ask for that sometimes we get a no to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Often that we get a no to,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are things that we ask for that we do get a yes to, and I think that's been where over the years I've had to learn to trust more than be skeptical, but certainly skepticism has had its foothold in my life.
Yeah, for those who don't know the real meaning of skeptical or any thought of that, it's not easily convinced.
Yes.
Having doubts or reservations.
Yeah.
It's the philosophy is relating to the theory that certain knowledge is impossible. And I think we've all, going back to what you just said too about healing and stuff too, there's always being skeptical until you see it for yourself, and you've prayed for someone, you've watched the healing happen. That really squashes some of the skepticism around miracles, but knowing what you just said too, that from a miracle standpoint, it's frustrating to see some people be healed and some not. Right. And you just wonder what, like, then you start that skepticism comes in, like, is this, what is this? And and you doubt some of those things. And maybe it's even doubting, I think doubting your own self and what God has called you to do too, right? You know what I mean? Like just being skeptical of that. You know, have you really called me to do that? Have you really called me to pray for this person for their healing? Or is this just something that I want to do because I just feel like it's the right thing to do? You know what I mean? Like there's all of those things, right? And I think those are the things that may always go unanswered for us. But yeah, I think you should be. Yeah, skepticism is not a bad thing. You know, I don't want to talk about it like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Because
somebody once quoted, "The goal isn't to fix somebody's doubts, but it's to earn their trust."
Yeah.
And I think that's a helpful reframing when it comes to the skeptic as a pastor's heart to help people process, for example, giving. It's natural. I think somebody steps into the church and they're pretty skeptical of, do they want my money? And well, that's okay. I think it's helpful to be in skepticism and let us earn your trust over time and let the fruit win you over.
Yeah. And then eventually the trusting of what you got to trust God with, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to what we're getting into a little bit, discipleship, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think there's just levels of that discipleship where, you know, it's great to make him Savior. There's a salvation moment, but it doesn't mean he's your Lord. You know, is he the Lord over your life in the area of X, your finances? Because you could take a look at your checkbook and see if he's the Lord over your finances or not, and how you put things first. Is he the Lord over your life? Well, you can look at your life daily and think, well, wait a minute, how did I start my day out? Was I grateful? Was I thankful? Did I get on my knees? Did I pray? What was that like today? You know, are we honoring God today with the first parts of our life today? And I think there's a lot of things that we can kind of measure that with, you know, and from a disciple standpoint, you know, what he's calling us to.
So stage 2, theory of Jonathan, is when the defenses come down a little bit and they go from the skeptical to the curious. They want truth. They're seeking, they're knocking, they're trying to figure this out, and they're asking real questions. And the questions aren't to pick holes in it, like the skeptic. They try and see where the defense is weak.
Sure.
And you know when you're having a conversation with a skeptic because they're just looking for weak areas in the argument or whatever. These people are different. They're wanting to submit themselves and to know truth. And they're curious. These people are seekers, I think. And I think that's a graduation process.
Yeah.
And I think of it like a Venn diagram. So there's some overlap between skepticism and curious. There's still areas probably where there's some skepticism, but mostly it's more out of a drive and motive to be curious. And I guess one of the questions I wrote down here, I have 2 questions. One, how do we avoid shaming honest questions? I don't know, in your experience, my experience in the past, I've seen people really put down.
Yeah.
And the first thing that will often be said is, that's the wrong question. Or there can just be harsh language used towards people who are genuinely curious.
Yeah.
They're not trying to poke holes at a church's finance. They just really want to understand.
Sure.
Why is the governance this way? Why is it structured? I'm using finance as an example, but you could pick anything.
Sure.
You know, we talk about, let's take something that's difficult.
Why do you do 3 songs in a...
Why do you do 3 songs?
Yeah.
Like, why does that?
Yeah, why is that?
And it's not to poke holes, but there's a genuine curiosity. Sure. And how do we avoid shaming people?
I think if somebody asks a simple question like, "Why do you do 3 songs?" Like, and again, not. I think you as a person, the person that's asking the question, you as a person, be gracious, merciful, and compassionate. First of all, because they're asking a legitimate question that's legitimate to them. It may be silly to you, because the silly answer is just, well, that's just kind of how we structure our services. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means that's how we do it, right? And I think when you're answering someone that is legitimately wanting to know, I don't think there's any dumb questions. I think there's dumber questions with skeptics because some people are just want to antagonize, to be antagonistic. Yeah. And you know that when they're asking those things, to be antagonistic. And it still doesn't mean you respond in a egregious or harsh way, because a soft answer turns away wrath, Scripture tells us. But someone who's really wanting to know something of what would be simple for you to answer is you answer the question with the truth of why you do what you do, and here's why, right? This is why we do it this way. All the way down to, we do it this way because we know that in an hour and 10 minutes, our Central Kids people are going to be at their wits' ends with the kids that you've dropped off to them today, and that's why we do only 3 songs and 30-minute message. And this is how we structure it so that the kids get the full benefit, the students get the full benefit of that our Central Kids workers will come back and serve again, and we want them to be a big part of what God's doing at Central. So I think it's, I know that's kind of a simplistic answer to some of those things, but I think sometimes that's just what it is, and they're very curious about it, and I love the curiosity though.
Yeah, curious people are the best.
They are.
How do you think we help people move from curiosity to conviction? Because curious people, they ask, is this true? Convicted people ask the question or make the statement, this is true, and I'll stake my life on it. Yeah. How do you think you shift somebody from sort of I'm vaguely curious about this to like, I have a conviction about this? Yeah,
that's a good question.
Do you think there's a practice or something that people can do?
I think if you're curious enough, eventually, once you get an answer from whoever you're asking the question with or talking with or spending time with, I think it's like anything else. The more time you spend with people who are further along than you in their faith, some of their convictions become yours because you see it working and playing out in their life, that it starts to become a part of who you are. And that's what a disciple is, right? You're following someone. It's a disciple. You're following someone. Jesus said, come and follow me, right? And so as they followed him, their curious nature, asking questions to their rabbi all the time, Jesus's convictions and things that he had became theirs as well, because they become like their discipler. And I think that is a part of that shift in nature in a real discipleship moment. You've had that in your life. I'm sure you've had people speaking into your life. There's people you follow and you come alongside of, or people that maybe are discipling you because you're reading their book and you love them as an author, and you start to pick up some of their thoughts, but also their convictions along the way because you've invested your time in it. And I think to become, to move from curious to conviction has to do with consistency. Are you consistent with the person that you're listening to, or you're working with, or you're following during that time, your process?
Yeah. That's really insightful, because when you're following somebody, you can learn from their life. Yeah. So that's the beautiful thing about being curious, is that at some point I encourage people to taste and see for yourself. Mm-hmm. But if you're not sure about that, watch somebody who's tasting. Yeah. And see the fruit of their life.
That's right.
And that might provoke you to try tithing. Or that might provoke you, see how much blessing is over their life. Sure. I see what it's doing for them. I'm following this person and I'm kind of curious about it. Curiosity is only questions. I would invite people to be curious in their actions as well. Yeah.
I think curiosity gets a negative, because there's always the term curiosity killed the cat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it puts such a negative spin on it. But curiosity is just, you just want to, people that are curious, they want to know more. They want to absorb something, listen, there's so much, like, it's kind of like eating candy. You absorb the sugar. It's a fast, whatever. And it tastes so good, but it doesn't last long. You know what I mean? Like if you got down and carved out a nice juicy steak right now, man, that's some sustenance, and it's going to last you for quite a few hours to digest that, right? And it's just meatier, right? And I think curious people want to have something that's of sustenance in their life because they've tasted other things that just doesn't fulfill anything, and it's just meaningless stuff. And I think people are so much more curious today than they have been in decades.
There's a real openness, particularly in the younger generation.
Yes.
Bible sales across America are up 41%. Bible app people
downloads,
putting Bible app downloads is up 60-something%. Most of that's
incredible.
Driven by Gen Z and millennials, and so there's certainly
that's
an
exciting.
Openness and a curiosity that we need to take advantage of. You kind of touched on already what I would call the third stage of discipleship. Mm-hmm. So we have this skeptic, and in the Venn diagram it overlaps a bit with curiosity. Okay. And I think there's another overlap where people go from not just being curious but to being hungry, the hungry disciple. I wrote down the hungry are passionate. They devour sermons, podcasts, worship playlists. They crave more of God. We love these people in our small groups because they're constantly asking questions. They're speaking up. They're keeping the conversation flowing. I've heard many, many, many sermons and worship leaders over the years stand up and say and preach and sing, all I want is more hunger of you, God. I want this nation to hunger for you, God. And it's a beautiful part of discipleship. I want to talk about, in this section, this third section, I actually want to talk about the unhealth of hunger, in that I wonder, or my experience of faith is that most people get stuck in this third phase of only desiring to be fed. Yeah. And it made me think, I'm forgetting now, it's either John 6 or John 9 where Jesus feeds the 5,000. Yeah. And there's 5,000 people experiencing this miracle of Jesus is preaching in authority. And then he walks over water and he meets them on the other side. And they're like, how did you do that? How did you get here? And he says to them, you're only seeking me because you are hungry and now you've had your fill. And you get to the end of that chapter. And when Jesus explains what real discipleship looks like, by the time you get to the end of that chapter, it's around verse 60-something. It says, and most of them left him. Yes. So they were all hungry. Yeah. They were all, let's use a Monday. They were all down the front, wanting prayer, wanting healing, wanting worship. They were all wanting to absorb the material and the content and the sermons. Feed me, fill me. I come to this church to be fed.
He even rattles a little bit too against seeking sign, like always seeking a sign.
Always
that kind of
that kind of thing. And my worry is in church, because we've so preached this idea that we need a hunger for God, which is beautiful and it is a part of the maturation of faith.
Totally.
But I think most congregants get stuck here in, pastor, just keep feeding me. And I think most people are what I would call spiritually gluttonous or overfed on content. Yeah. And because it fits into the narrative of consumption in our culture.
Well, you know me, I don't rail against that, but I do talk about that a lot.
We talk about it a ton.
Yeah.
And
we try not to be in that vein of what you're talking about here.
We try not to be, but I would still venture to guess that a huge portion.
Absolutely. I'm saying absolutely. But we do our best at.
So we do our best. But here's a difficult question I'd like to ask you. What do you think is a distinction between a healthy appetite and an unhealthy dependence on Pastor Larry to feed me my revelation? You feed me my scripture. And so we want people to be hungry, but we don't want this unhealthy dependence. I don't know, can you talk about maybe things that you've seen with people over the years or what you think the distinction is?
I think we have hundreds of years of trying to break that thought. Yeah. We live in a predominantly Catholic area And so Catholicism in and of itself back in the day was, let's make sure that we're the only ones that can read the scripture and interpret it, and you need to come to us to ask for forgiveness of sins, and we'll pardon you. And so I think a lot of that has to do with culture. And so in breaking that culture, right? And you've heard me say it from the stage too, like we're not here to have an audience. We're here to have an army. It's a big difference to have an audience than that means Pastor John and Pastor Larry and whatever pastor gets up there has to entertain them because they're an audience. We don't want to get in the entertainment business. We're in, really, as Ephesians talks about, we're in the equipping business. We're to equip people for the work of the ministry. And I think we've tried to do a better job at that, and having small group leaders, that kind of thing, that are leading groups, that are leading people, that are helping us pastor the masses that come here. Like, we can't do it all. And it's really starting to, I think we need to do a better job at equipping people as well, outside of Sunday. And I think for the average, and I would agree with you, John, the average person, the average church goer is still in that feed mode, right? And I think I said it this past Sunday a little bit of what God has called us to do when we pick up the corner of the mat of the paralytic person, and I put it in the context of our overall vision of the church, right? That everybody has their part. And we can't do it alone because everybody needs to pick up a corner of that mat, whether it's serving, giving, sacrificing, whatever it is. And I got a text this past week that someone says, "Hey, I want to serve on this because I want to do my part." Like, to me, that was another notch moving someone toward true discipleship, of true, like, they're not just coming and sitting now they're coming and serving in some capacity, right? And so I think it's predicated upon the church, the pastors of the church, to equip them and really make sure that they know why they're doing what they're doing, whether they have their own business and they may not serving kids. That's irrelevant. I want them to serve at their company. Like how can the fruits of the Spirit be manifested through their life at their company? And what does that look like? Mm-hmm. Right? Is it the heart of generosity from their boss? Is it mercy? Is it what is it? What's the fruit of the Spirit in their life? Is it patience? Is he patient with his workers? Does he treat them well? So I think it's more than just in the context of being in the church and serving in some capacity, but I think it's all interrelated and connected in some way. I don't know if that answers the question. I don't know if I got off on something, but
not at all. You've led in quite neatly into stage 4, but just before we head there, let me ask a really tough question. Do you think there are pastors who consciously or unconsciously enjoy the feeling of people being dependent on them and intentionally keep people in that place of entertaining, or you got to come here because what I have for you is the most important thing you're going to have?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the American church in general to a certain level.
Keep congregants dependent.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a boy.
I mean, I don't want to make this an indictment, but it's a heart check, I think, for a lot of people, and consistently for ourselves as well.
For sure.
To go, am I helping people, or am I feeding?
And to be fair,
fair,
right, John? It's natural.
Yeah, of course. We all want to be
for
dependent
you to want to be
looked up to.
Yeah, I want my wife to be not independent from me.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want her to need me.
Sure,
you know what I mean? And vice versa, right?
Yeah.
She wants to be.
That's a part of healthy relationships.
Yeah. So there's a healthy part of that, but then there's the unhealthy part of what you're talking about, and it's being totally dependent upon, like, I've got the words of life kind of thing, you know, and what I have to say is way more important than anything you could get out here, which is ludicrous. But they're without them coming out and saying that, there's something inside them that loves that. I don't think any pastor would come out and just say that. You know what I mean?
It feeds the ego.
Yeah, it feeds the ego, and I think, but I think what you can take a snapshot at, though, is what does that church look like?
What is it producing?
What's it producing? Is it producing disciple? Is it producing people that are going out in our community and winning people to Christ, bringing them in? Are they feeding the home? What are we doing with that? With what we get?
Yeah,
you know. Is there a fruit of what a disciple really is?
Yeah.
Which Jesus is not clear on what a Christian is, because that wasn't his description. It's disciple.
Yeah.
Is the key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, stage 4, the maturing of a disciple, is everything that you've talked about, what I call the feeders.
Yeah.
The people who know how to feed themselves, but then they don't use consumption as the mechanism for growth. They use consumption as the ability to go out and feed others, and the feeding of others is their mechanism for growth.
Yeah.
And I mean, you touched on it beautifully. John 21:17, feed my sheep, and Timothy, entrust to faithful people who will be able to teach others.
Yeah.
And we can kind of, you know, the ultimate sign of maturity is multiplication. It was kind of one of the things that I wrote down. And I guess just to finish on, how do we call feeders to reproduce and not retire? So many people, I think, are in our small groups and they're stuck in the, I want to consume from the small group. I don't want to run a small group. It's if it's too scary. Or what would you say to somebody just to encourage them maybe to step out into that 4th stage, into being somebody who contributes, to being part of the army, not just part of somebody who's enjoying the entertainment? Just as a pastor and a pastor's heart, like, what would you want to tell people to be like, hey, you know, how would you encourage them, move them, shift them?
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with how they see themselves sometimes too.
Yeah,
you know,
that's where you would start.
I think so. I think a lot of times that, you know, as pastors, we may look at them in a certain way that they're just always going to be feeders. But if you really want to disciple someone and work with someone, you got to get at the heart level, you know. And the heart level they may say, I just don't feel qualified, Pastor, to do that. I just don't. Well, and then you can say, well, you know what? You're in good company, because the disciples didn't feel qualified either. And what qualifies you is not a piece of paper. It's actually what qualifies you is the Spirit of God that's working in you. And let's work from there, and tell me if you can't, you know, literally run something like this. And all it is what I share with them too is facilitating things. You know, you just start facilitating it. You don't have to actually run the show, right, so to speak. Yeah, you're the kind of the spearheaded person, but you're going to facilitate some incredible conversations, and there's going to be conversations that you're not going to be able to answer the question to, but you know, you can say to them, you know what, let me get back to that. Let me go ask Pastor so-and-so or so whoever's over you to go and I'll have hopefully an answer for that area. Like, that's a great question, you know? And I think it's walking people through it step by step. And that's what I mean, you know, because there's always going to be feeders in your church, consumers, so to speak, we call them. But to move them from a consumer to a true disciple, to start to, and like you said, John, it's true. Multiplication is the key. It is totally that. I think it's working with people and individuals and having the patience with them right where they are, and walking them through some of the reservations or how they see themselves, and how God sees them, that we can all go and make a difference in whatever it is that He's called us to do. So I think it's taking time with people like that, and patience.
Yeah. And
that's something that we rarely have today in our world. I can say that for my own life. Like, there's times where I feel that people are written off too soon. I see it in sports. For example, I've seen people write off a quarterback.
Right.
They're just not playing well. Well, this is 3 years in. They're not going to make it, and now they're making Pro Bowls after year 6, 7.
Yeah. You could use the GOAT as the example of that. Couldn't
you?
Tom Brady.
There was
much hype around him at the beginning of his
career.
If
you saw him run the 40, you'd be like, oh my gosh, he's the most non-athletic person you've ever seen in your life run the 40. Go look at the tape on that. It's awful.
Yeah.
It just looks like a bunch of gangly legs and arms just throwing itself all over the place.
I've not seen it.
It's awful. You'll love it when you see it. It's hilarious, and you would think the same thing, right? But here it is. It's not a matter of that. It's unearthing. Discipleship is unearthing people's hearts. I think there's a lot buried in there that the enemy wants to keep buried and doesn't want them to know their true identity and what they can actually accomplish through Christ.
Yeah.
And I think it's up to us as leaders, pastors, to unearth some of that, because there is incredible potential there.
There's a lot of fear I find in lots of people. And so just coming back to the simple mandate to be a shepherd.
Yeah.
And to create space where they feel protected, where they feel like if they mess up, that's okay. It's no biggie.
Well, I'll give you another example too. Like you just talked about that. Like the person that's producing this right now is Christina, and she's amazing. And so there was so much potential there. And so we brought her on staff, and there's things that she had to learn along the way and is still learning. And what I love about her is that she's always wanting and willing to learn more about this space.
This curiosity and hunger.
The curiosity and hunger. Yeah, it goes back to that. And it's not that she's been perfect in any stretch, just like you and I. We're not perfect either, but it's the continual curiosity and continual wanting to grow and wanting to learn, and the willingness to do that is why God has opened the doors like He has in her life because of that. And I think if we would have said to Christina, well, you really don't qualify for this, and just kind of pushed her off, well, she wouldn't be where she's at today and actually producing this right now.
Yeah.
And so if we didn't have the patience and the time, when I say we, there's other people that are on staff that work with her, but they saw the potential and the hunger and the willingness to learn and the willingness to grow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. That's all it takes really in God's kingdom. There's just has to be a willingness in your heart to do it, So
I love Christina. Yeah. She's the bomb.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
that's
you.
Everything that I had. And thank you so much for tuning in. If you followed us this long, we really do appreciate it. We would love it if you went ahead and clicked that like button. If you're watching on YouTube,
smash it
even. Don't break the computer, but hit that like button. That'd be great. Give us some reviews. Make sure that they're good ones. That would be fantastic. But otherwise, I pray that this in some way has enriched your life. God bless.